As a true crime podcast host, I would tell listeners this is where the warning signs become evidence. A shared tablet lights up with a message from another woman. A policy has been activated. A husband is suddenly rushing, evasive, and cold. Then the pieces start locking together: money fraud, an affair, and a trip that may have been designed to make a pregnant wife vanish without raising suspicion. That is where this nightmare truly begins.
Leo gave me a quick kiss in our Boston condo, claiming another investor call. The closing door left a heavy silence. His tablet on the sofa felt warm to the touch. A credit card alert popped up, a designer. The charge note said nursery, but it wasn't for our baby. My world just shattered. It's good to have you here. Where are you joining from? Let's explore how belief can hide betrayal. This story is fictional, but its warning is real. My husband just left for a business trip that wasn't real. I'm in our glass walled condo, his tech trophies looking like fakes. This wedding ring feels like a cuff on my hand. I see Leo's face, his smile forced over coffee as he scanned investment docs. For us, he said, touching my belly. I should have felt the deceit. I should have seen the tension, his averted eyes. But 7 months along, I clung to our past, before his big startup sale. The deal was for his app, a buyout that made him a millionaire instantly and changed everything between us. Leo, you're always working, I'd said. It's for our family, he answered, his hands cold. This sale sets us up for life. He wasn't wrong, we were distant. After the buyout, he lived for meetings while I went through this pregnancy alone. You're gone every night, I'd protested. He gave a rehearsed smile. It's temporary, Sophia, a necessary sacrifice. I remembered walks along the Charles River, his proposal in the public garden. His eyes used to see only me. When did that stop? Okay, I said, needing to trust him. His grin was empty. He suddenly locked down all his devices. For security, he claimed, and began tracking my expenses. His phone never stopped. He'd take calls outside, whispering. I heard bits. She's here now. She knows nothing. The funds went through. When he came back in, I asked who called. Venture capital, he blurted. But I'd met all his investors during the sale. Leo, what's going on? I begged. He shut down. Sophia, just trust me for once. It stung. I had, with my father's whole inheritance, almost $2 million for our future. He'd shown me portfolios, and I never asked for details. I do, I'd said, feeling like a liar in his arms. He wore a strange perfume. I glanced at his screen and saw a file. Beacon Hill Townhouse deed. Then he slammed the laptop shut. Just closing paperwork, he mumbled, tense. He blocked my view. Then he just paced, checking his phone. Is everything all right? I asked. Fine, he snapped, busy. But his call wasn't for hours. The Boston Harbor lights felt strange and cold tonight. I recalled my sister's text. Leo seems weird, Sophia. You okay? I'd argued for him. Now seeing him, I felt a terrible dread. Trust me, Sophia, Leo whispered. This will fix it all. He was right. It would fix things for his other life. Soon I'd find the proof that would break mine. The microwave clock glowed. He roamed our condo, restless, as I fought to keep calm against the rising anxiety. Leo, please sit down, just talk. He looked away. I can't, he said, glancing at his phone. It was a normal Tuesday. There was no emergency. I gave up. Arguing with him was useless now. He wasn't the same. I watched the city below, dread coiling in my gut. His phone lit up with a name I didn't know. The text asked, Does she suspect? Not at all, Leo typed back quickly. Her next text, the money? He replied, It's done. The place is all yours. He deleted the chat, put his phone away, and switched on a game. I watched him, my heart racing. Who was that? I said over the TV. He looked at me, his eyes empty. He seemed like someone I'd never met. He faced the screen again. A new assistant, he said, very busy. Since the buyout 6 months ago, everything was busy. The meetings, the calls, his interest in baby gear, but not our future. But the alert for a $5,000 designer fee was clear. My phone buzzed. My sister, Maria, she'd been my rock since Dad passed. She warned me last week to check our finances, saying Leo seemed off. I'd ignored her warning, but this charge, I questioned him. He grabbed his tablet. What was that alert? I asked, my voice trembling. A surprise gift, he said, putting the device high on a shelf. Let's have a nice evening, Sophia. Don't spoil it. His tone was sharp. Just trust me. It sounded like an order. I looked at his tense expression. I saw the man from our wedding 5 years ago, the one who held me after my father's funeral. My calm port was now a hurricane. I remembered the hospital's call on October 2nd, 2023. The inheritance came 3 months after, nearly $2 million. My dad planned for everything. I remembered signing the papers, giving Leo control while I was lost in sorrow. He swore he'd invested for our legacy. I never looked at the accounts. Leo, I asked, where is my father's money? His face was a mask. Invested? Safe. Then why is our joint account empty? His jaw clenched. Market fluctuations, I'm handling it. Handling it with these charges? For God's sake, Sophia. He ran a hand through his hair, his voice rising. The baby kicked. He noticed and softened. Sorry, the stress is immense. This new partnership will solve everything, I promise. Just believe me. That phrase again, I desperately wanted to. The alternative was that Leo, my husband, was a liar, that my inheritance was gone, our marriage a sham. It was unthinkable. I nodded silently. He grabbed his coat at 8:15 p.m., a fast kiss on my cheek. I'll see you tomorrow, he said, heading out. My gut twisted. You're staying out? It's an all-nighter with the partners. Be back by sunrise. His smile was weak. Rest. I watched him leave from the doorway, hand on my stomach. He never looked back before the elevator shut. I went back inside the quiet condo, filled with the smell of his deceit. I got his tablet. I knew I wouldn't be the same in the morning. The passcode was our anniversary. I almost hoped it was wrong. His browser history was open. I searched the designer's name. Her social media popped up. A post about a dream nursery. The address tagged in the photo wasn't ours. It was a townhouse on Beacon Hill. My pulse hammered. I scrolled through the pictures. The designer tagged the proud new parents. The man's profile was private, but the woman's was not. The caption read, "Building a nest for our little one. Love you, Elle." I couldn't breathe. A gift for a friend? No, L was for Leo. This was too intimate. He wasn't just working, he was building another home. The woman's name on the profile was Isabel. I searched her name and tech. Her profile came up instantly. She was a programmer from a rival startup. Young, stunning. The floor fell out from under me. The late nights, the hidden calls, my missing inheritance, it all made sense. The realization was nauseating. My hands shook as I kept searching. Her professional profile had one picture. It was her and Leo, his arm around her. Her hand rested on her own pregnant belly. I collapsed onto the cold floor. The empty bank account finally had an explanation. It paid for his other life. Her Beacon Hill home, their nursery, their baby. He was robbing our child's future dot model. The real estate mogul I married, the man I'd built a life with, was a complete stranger. My sister Chloe always said my father distrusted Marcus. 30 years as a forensic accountant, 30 years reading balance sheets and the men behind them. He saw Marcus's charm as a liability, a beautifully packaged debt. For years he warned me. I called it being cynical, but I was just naive. And I was only seeing the tip of the iceberg. I was witnessing my marriage become a thriller on my own office computer. I stared at the misdirected delivery confirmation, a custom necklace. For our forever home, the gift card read. Always yours, he'd signed it. His handwriting, even on a screen, felt like a punch to the gut. So intimate and familiar. The way he used to write notes for me, back when our life was still our own. Hours later, at Chloe's firm with an attorney, I would understand. Not just gift receipts, but wire transfers. payments from my business expansion fund to her name. One was labeled Vineyard Down Payment. It included a link to a Napa estate, with a view just like the one we dreamed of. He sent it that morning at 9:51. For our new chapter, the message said, he stole it all. He was building my dream with another woman. That's when I heard Chloe's heels clicking down the hall, her voice calling out, Ava, are you in the office, Ava? I looked up. Her expression was a mix of confusion and concern, her leather briefcase thudding to the floor. You need to hire a lawyer, I managed to say. My stomach was in knots. What did you do? Nothing, honey? You're okay. Her voice was suddenly sharp, the voice of an accountant who knew how to assess the damage. Just tell me what you found. Our future, I whispered, looking past her to the architectural model of the nursery we were supposed to build. What happened to our future? She didn't say a word. She just took the tablet from my hand and guided me to the chair, away from the screen that showed the demolition. Is something wrong? I asked, my voice weak. An issue with the company accounts? Maybe, Chloe said, pointing to a file she had opened on my monitor. But the loans your husband co-signed. Ava? I just stared blankly at her. He just leveraged the entire company as collateral on a high-risk loan that's setting off every alarm I have. The world tilted, the floor feeling like it was sinking. I grabbed the arm of my chair. Chloe's hand was firm on my shoulder. Ava, I need you to focus. You are not in immediate trouble, but we have to be strategic. My family's financial advisor joined us on a secure video line. A woman with piercing eyes gave Chloe a brief, grim nod. Mr. Nolan is on his way. He's a private investigator. An investigator? My voice was thin. Why would I need a PI? Chloe's gaze was direct, filled with a seriousness I had never seen. Because, she said evenly, I think Marcus might be planning to bankrupt you. I wanted to laugh it off as some bizarre financial mix-up we could easily fix. But the sound caught in my throat. A deep, cold part of me understood that the most perfect facades hide the deepest cracks. I knew she was right. They had me sit in my own office, which now smelled of betrayal and stale coffee. The investigator, Nolan, had a face that looked both exhausted and kind. That was the only thing that kept me from fleeing the building. It was my company, but it felt like a trap. A clock on the wall showed 10:02 a.m. Our final meeting with the nursery designer was scheduled in less than 30 minutes. Nolan was in his early 50s, with gray at his temples and the steady air of a man who had navigated San Francisco's most complex betrayals. He wore a small, discreet pin on his lapel. His eyes met mine. Mrs. Sterling. I'm James Nolan, he said. Your sister explained the loan agreements she discovered. I need to ask you a few things, and I need your absolute honesty. I nodded, my throat feeling impossibly tight. First, can you tell me why your husband would use your company as collateral for a $20 million construction loan 2 weeks ago? What? The number was incomprehensible. A construction loan? Nolan slid a binder across the desk. Your sister found the signed agreement. $20 million with your business assets forfeited in case of default. Does any of that sound right? I shook my head, feeling a wave of dizziness. No, Marcus. His firm manages our larger investments, but we never discussed anything like this. Mrs. Sterling, Nolan's voice was calm. With your consent, I need to call the lender and verify this agreement is active. Yes, do it, my words came out in a breathless rush. This has to be some kind of error. Marcus loves me. Nolan was already dialing, the call on speaker. A crisp voice came on the line. Sterling Capital Special Assets Division. You're speaking with Richard? Mr. Jones, James Nolan, California PI license, 8127. Investigating potential corporate fraud. I need to verify loan agreement SC449 for Ava Sterling, date of birth, March 15th, 1993. There was a brief pause and the sound of typing. Yes, I show a high-risk commercial loan active under that name. The guarantor is Sterling Bakeries LLC, $20 million. The sole default beneficiary is Sterling Development. The loan was activated 3 weeks ago. The first quarter's interest was paid in a lump sum. The office started to spin. Can you forward me the digital signature page? Nolan asked. This is a time-sensitive and active investigation. Sending it now. Nolan disconnected the call and opened his tablet. Seconds later, he turned the screen to face me. There it was, my company's name, my personal details, and a signature that looked like mine but felt alien. That's not my signature, I whispered. Nolan zoomed in. You're positive? Look at the A in Ava. My finger trembled as it hovered just above the screen. I studied graphic design. I always start my A with a loop. That one is a sharp peak. And the S in sterling, mine is smooth. That one is jagged. Nolan looked from the tablet to a signed letter Chloe handed him. He nodded slowly. This is a forgery. I don't understand, my voice cracked. Why would Marcus forge my signature? What for? Nolan didn't respond, his fingers moving quickly over his tablet. Mrs. Sterling, I need your permission to conduct a full financial background check on your husband. Yes, whatever it takes. Anything. More typing. Nolan's jaw tightened. His development company filed for bankruptcy protection last month, he said softly. He's carrying over $2 million in personal debt, and all of his credit lines are frozen. He's being sued by 3 investment firms. I struggled to draw a breath. There's more, Nolan continued. He drained a joint trust account over the last 8 months. The total amount withdrawn was just over $2.5 million. That was my inheritance, I choked out, for our family's future. He said he was moving it into a more secure fund. Mrs. Sterling, I'm very sorry, Nolan said, but those funds were channeled into an unregistered offshore entity. The money is gone. I gripped the desk to stay upright. One last thing. Your husband took out a $500,000 loan from a private lender. The lender is a man named Dmitry Volkov. We know of him. He's a money launderer with connections to the Russian mob. The entire principal is due in 3 days. And if Marcus can't pay? Nolan's grim expression was the only answer I needed. I glanced at the clock. 10:18 a.m. My phone, lying on the desk, started to vibrate relentlessly. Nolan glanced at the screen. It's your husband, he said. This is the 25th time he has called or texted since I arrived. 25 times. Nolan angled the phone so I could see the string of notifications. Marcus Sterling. Ava, where are you? Marcus Sterling. Ava, call me back. Marcus Sterling. Why are you not answering? Marcus Sterling. You're going to make us late for the designer. Marcus Sterling. Ava. Marcus Sterling. Please. Marcus Sterling. I love you. Call me so I know you are safe. The messages were a 20-minute symphony of a concerned husband. He wants me at that meeting, I said, the truth feeling like a shard of glass in my throat. He wants you in a specific place at a specific time, Nolan corrected gently. The intercom buzzed. It was the front desk. Mr. Sterling is on his way up. 10:28 a.m. Nolan placed his hand flat on my desk. Mrs. Sterling, he said, his voice low and intense, your husband is a cornered man who thinks he is $20 million away from fixing all of his problems. He is coming through that door in 2 minutes. If you stay here, you are vulnerable. We need to leave, right now. If I don't show, he'll know something is wrong, I protested. He cannot harm you if we are with you, he countered. The clock read 10:29. I pictured Marcus's smile, his excitement about our daughter. This new project secures everything, he had promised. I thought of my company, our child's trust fund. The difference between protection and control had evaporated. Follow your gut, Mrs. Sterling, Nolan urged. I made my choice. I did not go. 10 minutes later, we were in a secure car. 2 hours later, a call came from the San Francisco Police Department. I saw the truth in his face. Nolan's expression turned to stone as he listened to his phone. He was midway through explaining our legal options when the alert came through. He looked up, his eyes holding a terrible finality as he showed me the security photo. A small, sophisticated incendiary device was wired to the ignition of my car. My hand flew to my mouth. The blood rushed from my head. Chloe, I breathed into my phone, my voice hollow. It's Marcus. The world went quiet. On my screen, the investigator's initial report glowed. I heard my sister's sharp, panicked gasp. Ava, what is it? Chloe's voice was tight with a new kind of dread. Oh, Ava, she said. Tell me, just tell me what it is. He's with someone else. Chloe didn't need to see the proof. My broken whisper was confirmation enough. The file was labeled Our Napa Life. The woman's name was Olivia. There were photos, contracts, messages. The words became a toxic poison I read again and again. My mind couldn't comprehend the layers of deceit. The part where our daughter was called a temporary setback. The search history, my voice shook. What was in his search history? How to trigger a high-risk pregnancy, Chloe read, her voice seething with fury, and how to liquidate corporate assets during bankruptcy. My legs gave way. I collapsed into a chair, the phone clattering to the floor. I was paralyzed. The Tesla, the near miss, he did this, I choked out. No, Maya's voice cut through the phone. Chloe, listen to me. This wasn't your fault. The system override on your car was deliberately sabotaged. He tried to kill you. The CHP would have called it a tragic malfunction, a fluke in the software. Do you understand? If that car had gone over the cliff, I'd be planning your funeral. That's the reality. Her voice was ice. He wanted you both dead, Chloe. We need to plan our next move. An hour later, a man stood at my door. He was in his 40s, lean, in a casual jacket that couldn't conceal his sharp intensity. Maya sent me, he said, his voice calm and low. I'm Alex Vance. I'm a security consultant. She filled me in. Let's go over the data. I led him to the home office. He closed the door and the spacious room suddenly felt constricting. Mrs. Sterling, Alex began, taking the chair opposite me. What I'm about to propose is unorthodox. I need your absolute trust. Can I have it? I managed a nod. Your husband recently increased your life insurance policy to $50 million. My stomach twisted into a knot. I know, for the baby, he said, but if we both die, his family's investment fund is the sole beneficiary. That's not right. We agreed it would go to Maya's kids. Alex angled his laptop towards me. These are from his encrypted network. He used proxies and wiped the cache, but he's an amateur. A list appeared on the screen. Hacking autonomous vehicle guidance. Overriding failsafe protocols. Every search was timestamped. The last query was at 2:03 this morning. This is your husband, Alex confirmed, opening a file. He got cocky. He saved drafts of notes to his financial advisor about the prenup and the policy structure. He thought he was erasing his trail, but he left us a blueprint. Why was he so careless? Alex explained. He needed it to look like a terrible accident. A system failure bypasses certain clauses in your prenup. With you gone, his family fund collects the entire $50 million. The insurance company wouldn't question a tech malfunction. The payout requires a ruling of accidental death, not murder. Right now, the Highway Patrol's initial report is heading that way. The room started to tilt. I held onto the desk. Chloe, Alex said, his tone firm, I need you to let him believe his plan almost worked, that you're too shattered to be suspicious. This is now an investigation into conspiracy to commit murder and massive insurance fraud. With your help, we can use his own plan against him. He paused. You want me to act? I whispered. You want me to pretend I don't know he just tried to kill me? Exactly, Alex said, because Julian is the only person who knows what really happened, and he thinks he's gotten away with it. He played a video file. It was from our building's garage. Julian, by the elevators, watching my car leave for my drive up the coast. The timestamp was 9:51 a.m. I watched him see my car drive off. I saw his carefully practiced look of concern. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call, and for just a second he smiled. A flash of pure triumph. He thinks he won, I said, a cold numbness spreading through me. My voice didn't sound like my own. Yes, Alex confirmed, and that's our advantage. He leaned forward. Chloe, we need Julian to think you're recovering with Maya in Napa. We will secure you and put him under surveillance. Men who think they're brilliant get reckless. He will slip up. He'll contact the mistress. He'll call the insurance broker. When he does, we'll be waiting. How long will it take? I asked. 3 days, maybe less. I stared at the image of Julian's smile, the man I married 2 years ago, the man who promised to love me, till death do us part. He meant it, just not for himself. Alex slid a keycard across the desk. There's a problem. Your friends will call. They'll want to visit you at your sister's. You cannot speak to them. We can't risk him finding out the truth. We can't tell anyone what's happening, not for now. My friends, my colleagues at the firm, they think I was cutting them off. I understand, I said, seeing no other choice. Alex stood and opened a small briefcase. Inside was a burner phone, a hotel key, and a thick envelope of cash. This phone has only one number in it, he said. The key is for a private villa at Auberge. The cash is for incidentals, no credit cards, no traceable calls. For the next 72 hours, Chloe Sterling is resting in wine country. We're about to find out what your husband does when he believes he's getting everything he ever wanted. The villa overlooked the Napa Valley. I couldn't appreciate the view. I could only picture Julian's triumphant smile. The suite was cold and modern, a single bedroom, a sitting area with a couch and a desk. On that desk, 3 monitors displayed a dozen camera feeds from our penthouse in the city. The home where my husband was now playing the part of the devoted, worried spouse. Alex sat with me, holding a cup of tea. He'd been with me since we arrived nearly 2 hours ago. The cameras went live at 2 p.m., he said calmly. My team installed them this afternoon while Julian was at his office. The warrant is for electronic surveillance. We have visuals on the main living spaces and all exits. The audio is active, so we will hear everything. At 2:34 p.m., Julian's Lucid appeared on screen. I watched him get out, toss his keys on the counter, and walk into the living room, surveying it like he'd never seen it before. He sat on the couch and pulled out his phone. For nearly 5 minutes, he was perfectly still, just looking at the screen. Then, a smile started to form. It was subtle, just a slight upturn of his lips, pure satisfaction. It was gone in a second, but it was there. You saw that? I whispered. Alex nodded, his expression grim. Julian stood up, went to the bar, and poured a measure of scotch. He drank it in one swift motion. He stood there for a moment, breathing deeply, like a marathon runner who had finally crossed the finish line and could let go. His sister Kendra arrived at 6:48 p.m. I watched her Porsche pull up to the building. She emerged carrying a designer bag and rang the intercom. Julian let her in. Kendra took one look at him and threw her arms around his neck. I watched her perform her role of the concerned sister, saw him pat her back, his face a perfect mask as he glanced over her shoulder to the street below. She's part of it, I said, my voice breaking. She knew? I'm sorry, Chloe, Alex replied. Family can be complicated. Kendra said something and Julian nodded. They sat on the sofa. She unpacked gourmet takeout. She was bringing him dinner because that's what you do when a mission is accomplished. Julian gave her a true smile, intimate and conspiratorial. I felt a wave of nausea. They talked for 2 hours. I watched Kendra gesture emphatically, saw Julian nod and put a hand on her arm. At 8:52 p.m., Kendra hugged him goodbye. As the door clicked shut, Julian's facade vanished. He went to the sofa, took out his phone, and dialed a number with a smug look on his face. Alex made a quick note. He's clever, I'll give him that. A monster? Absolutely. I didn't sleep at all. I sat in my chair watching the monitors. At 11:14 p.m., Julian dimmed the lights. At 11:22, the master bedroom feed went dark. I stared at the infrared screen, searching for any sign of remorse or anxiety. He didn't move. He was asleep within minutes, breathing evenly. The peaceful rest of a man with no conscience. My sister Maya arrived at dawn with coffee. I was in the same spot. You should get some sleep. I can't. She didn't push it. She just placed the mug beside me. At 9:15 a.m. on December 3rd, Julian went into his study. The new smart home system he'd installed had a sensor on the door. He must have believed no one was watching. I saw on the app's history log that a video call had been initiated. I couldn't hear the other side, only him. His voice was charged, crackling with excitement as he gestured with his hands. He paced the office, grinning before letting out a sharp, triumphant laugh. He ended the call, glanced at his phone, and pumped his fist in the air, a definite win. Maya leaned in. What in the world was that? I'm not sure, but I am going to find out. I picked up my phone and sent a text to our family's lawyer. I need access to his call records. We have to know who he was speaking with this afternoon. I watched Julian return to the living room, still smiling. He's not concerned, Maya observed quietly. He's thrilled. That evening, at 10:46 p.m., a car service dropped a woman off near our gate. The street camera was grainy and the lighting was poor, but I could make out her silhouette. Tall and willowy with long hair, she walked to the side entrance, used the key fob, and let herself inside. Julian met her by the terrace, pulling her into a deep kiss. They went inside. The lights came on. 15 minutes later, they went dark. Maya pulled up the key fob's access records. Nina Petrova, 27, with an apartment in the Marina district. Do you recognize her? She asked. I simply shook my head. I had never seen or heard that name before. The woman was gone by sunrise. The audio from the study's smart device finally went live at 4:30 p.m. on the 3rd. I wish it never had. Maya was near the window when her tablet chimed. She glanced at the screen, then looked at me. Our security consultant has the live audio feed. He's routing it through to my computer. A small icon blinked on the screen. The microphone is hot. We can hear everything now, she whispered. Are you ready for this? I shook my head but nodded yes. Our attorney, Ben Davies, arrived at 7 a.m. On December 4th, he arrived with a tablet, looking like he hadn't slept. He placed a folder on the coffee table. The financials, he announced. Your husbands, we got them an hour ago. The bank provided the complete asset report. He opened the file. It was filled with page after page of statements. I recognized Julian's main account, and then a second one, which was receiving large, steady payments. That one belongs to Nina Petrova, Ben said. 27, an analyst at his venture capital firm, lives in the Marina, leases a 2022 Maserati. She has no criminal history. How long has this been going on? My voice was strained. 18 months. The first charge was March 3rd, 2022. Since then, hundreds of entries, nearly 60 major payments. The numbers were staggering. 18 months. I was going through IVF for our baby while he was funding a whole other relationship. We matched it with her business travel, David explained. She's an interior designer. Her receipts place her in Chicago dozens of times last year. Always at a boutique hotel near his new development. He hesitated. Chloe, I'm so terribly sorry. You need to grasp what this timeline means. I stared at the tablet. Hundreds of charges, dozens of trips. 18 months. Is she aware? I whispered. About the baby, about the inheritance. We can't confirm that yet, David said, but we're on it. That night, August 11th, at 9:32 p.m., Sofia Vargas was in my husband's car, and I heard everything. My goodness, she sounded frantic. Liam, I saw the specialist notes. I saw what they found. I just don't understand. Hey, quiet now, it's all right. His voice was calm, the same one he used when I lost my mother. Come on. I could hear the seats shift, her muffled sobs against his chest. I am so sorry, she cried. She kept weeping. I know you too. I mean, things were strained, but she's your wife. This has to be... Liam's voice was firm. Look at me. This is nearly done. The pregnancy is very delicate. We are not going to be hiding much longer. A brief pause. Then Sophia's voice, hesitant. What are you saying? I'm saying we can finally have a real life. You and I. No more secrets. No more sneaking away. We can be a proper couple. But the child, her health? Unfortunate, a complication. Liam's tone was detached and cold, like he was discussing a zoning permit, not my life and our unborn child. This presents an opening for us. I felt the oxygen leave the room. Jessica stared at the monitor, her own hand shaking. David took out his phone and began recording the feed. An opening? Sophia's voice was sharp. Liam, that is, you can't talk like that. Why not? It's the reality of the situation. I have been looking for an exit from this marriage for a year, and now the issue may resolve itself. That is a monstrous thing to say. It's a practical thing to say. A moment of quiet hung in the air. Don't pretend you aren't a little bit relieved. Another heavier pause. I am, she confessed in a whisper. I'm so sorry, but I am. I'm so tired of all the hiding. I know, my love. But it's almost at an end. There is one more thing, Sophia said. Her voice was low, anxious. Something I have to tell you. What is it? I'm pregnant. You said we would tell her together. You said we would sit Chloe down and lay it all out. Well, it seems we may not have to explain a thing now. Liam's voice was suddenly bright, ecstatic. You're 7 weeks? We can just tell people we found each other after she's gone. They'll buy it. People bond over grief. No one will ever know the truth. 7 weeks. I covered my mouth with my hand. Are you certain? Sophia asked. Because timelines are easy to verify. If the baby is born in August, August is 7 months away. By that time, we'll be far away from here. Gone? I told you, Monaco. We are not staying in Chicago. Too many memories. We will start fresh. Somewhere beautiful. Just the three of us. How would we ever manage that? Liam laughed, a deep, genuine laugh. Chloe's prenup has an inheritance clause. $15 million. I become the sole beneficiary if she passes away. It'll take a minute, but once that clears, our life is set. 15 million. Oh, Liam, I know, it changes everything for us. I heard him fumbling in the console, the unscrewing of a cap. What are you doing? Sophia asked. Pouring us a little something to celebrate. Liam, I can't drink. I'm pregnant. Then I'll have one for the three of us. The gurgle of liquor to us, Sophia, to our new life. To no more lies. To us, she echoed. Her voice was barely a murmur. David and Jessica were frozen, watching the audio waves on the screen. By this time next year, Liam announced, we'll be shopping for yachts in Monaco. $15 million buys a brand new start. It buys a lot of silence. I love you, Sophia whispered. I love you too, both of you. A silence, then his voice got softer. Let me feel. Liam, don't, not now. A soft laugh from Sophia. Then Liam's voice, so full of love it made me nauseous. Hello in there, my little champion. Daddy can't wait to finally meet you. I barely reached the bathroom before I was sick. I was on the cold tile floor, vomiting into the toilet, my whole frame trembling. I knew Jessica was behind me, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't think. All I could hear was Liam saying, Daddy can't wait to meet you, to a baby that wasn't ours. A baby made while he was waiting for me to die. When I finally finished, Jessica was there with a glass of water. I'm sorry, she said. I'm just so profoundly sorry you had to experience that. I took the glass, my hands shaking. 7 weeks, I whispered. She's 7 weeks along. I know. He was arranging this long before my diagnosis. He was already. I know. I met her eyes. How am I going to survive this? Jessica had no answer. Nobody did. The only thing left was to fight. And fighting meant hearing my husband plan his new future, paid for with my life. We went back to the office. David had isolated the audio clip. He was replaying it, making notes. Jessica opened a new file on her laptop. He admitted to planning to secure the inheritance. She said he plans to use the $15 million to flee the country. That's conspiracy right there. But we need to prove he knew about that clause before this. David nodded. His story will be that he only recently found out, that he's just adapting to a tragedy, not orchestrating one. Jessica looked at me. Chloe, do you have any proof, any emails, showing Liam looked into that prenup before your last doctor visit? I closed my eyes, picturing Liam on his laptop at our kitchen island, scrolling through legal documents before shutting it quickly. Yes, I said. I knew precisely where to look. 3 days after I vanished, my husband Liam filed the $15 million life insurance claim. 4 days later, the spending began. I saw it all from a family cabin in Lake Geneva, watching him enter the lobby of Grant and Associates at 10:34 a.m. on October 6th, holding a briefcase and wearing the suit I bought for his birthday. I watched him sit with a lawyer in his late 50s, a man my attorney David identified as an expert in rapid estate claims, and signed document after document for an hour. At 10:42 a.m., Agent Thorne's computer pinged. Sterling Mutual had just received a claim against the policy of Chloe Ashford. The sole beneficiary was Liam Ashford. The policy value, $15 million. It's normally a 2 to 3 month affair, Detective Miller said, joining us at the safe house, but with presumed hiking fatalities in remote areas, they expedite it. When a car is found abandoned but no body is recovered, they push through the death certificate. Liam will likely receive the funds by early January. January 1st, I whispered. The anniversary of our engagement. Liam gave me a look that communicated everything he couldn't say. Later, he phoned my sister, Emily. We heard it on the apartment's audio surveillance as he stood by our condo window looking over the city. Hey, Em? Yeah, just trying to hold on. Hey, I wanted to get your thoughts on something. His voice was heavy with manufactured sorrow, a perfect performance of a shattered man. I'm considering a small gathering at the Lincoln Park Conservatory on Sunday the 28th. Just for our inner circle. I just can't. He faked a choke. I can't face a formal service without her. Emily's reply was a faint sound from his phone. Oh, Liam, of course. Anything you need. Do you need help with arrangements? No, I just want the people who loved her to be there. I'll be there. I'll bring Jason and I'll call some of her friends from the gallery. Thank you, Liam's voice cracked. I don't know how I'm supposed to do this without her, Emily. I never even said goodbye. I saw my sister's face on the video feed. She was openly weeping. And Liam, in my apartment, tilted his head just out of the phone's view as a tiny smirk crossed his lips. Mr. Davies wrote on his legal pad, Memorial, Lincoln Park, October 28th, establishing the grieving husband narrative. On October 8th at 2:15 p.m., Liam visited a private wealth bank in Aspen and withdrew $50,000 in cash. We had the surveillance stills within an hour. The image was grainy, but it was him. Liam at the counter, signing the withdrawal form, his face a mask of calm. Detective Miller displayed the financial records on his screen. Joint investment portfolio, Morgan Stanley. A balance of around $500,000. He's entitled to that, so why the cash? Mr. Davies wondered aloud. He didn't touch that account, Miller said, scrolling. This came from your personal platinum card, Mrs. Ashford. Not our joint funds. I was stunned. My platinum card is in my jewelry box in the bedroom. He must have taken it, Mr. Davies said, likely before your hiking trip. Miller agreed. The bank's fraud detection AI had already flagged it. The primary card holder was listed as presumed deceased in the national database on October 5th. The PI confirmed the wire transfer. We have audio of him setting it up. Mr. Thorne, the investigator, looked pleased. He's overconfident. He's getting sloppy, Morales corrected. The next day, Julian phoned his Swiss banker. He was on a crowded street, but the recording was perfect. His impatience was palpable. I understand the process, but I am the sole director. I need to liquidate the entire portfolio. A brief pause. $5 million. Yes, that is the exact amount. A longer wait. What do you mean you need the final dissolution papers? The news release was public. The company is gone. We couldn't hear the banker, but Julian's angry reply was sharp. How long will that take? It could be weeks. I don't have weeks. My new partners are expecting immediate capital. He paused, releasing a theatrical sigh. I'm sorry, this is all just incredibly difficult. Can you please review the procedure again? Another silence. Then Julian's voice hardened. Fine, I will get the document. Thank you. He hung up and we heard the sharp sound of his palm hitting the dashboard of his car. Mr. Thorne wrote a note. Needs dissolution notice. Funds are inaccessible. That night, Julian was in the den with Isabel. I have our flights, he said, his voice like velvet. Zurich, November 5th. One way. One way. Isabel sounded wary. Julian, that's just 2 weeks from now. I know, but we can't afford any delays. The longer we're here, the more people will ask questions. I want us gone before the bankruptcy is even final. It raises less suspicion. But the baby, my 20-week appointment is on the 3rd. We will find you the best doctor in all of Europe. A true pioneer. Money is no longer a concern, Isabel. You have to believe in me. There was a moment of silence. Then Isabel, her voice softer. I believe in you, Julian. It just feels so rushed. I know, my love. But next month we'll have a quiet chalet looking out at the Alps. No more secrets. No more hiding. Only the three of us. Detective Morales opened a new file on his screen. Airline manifests. He already had the subpoena for Swiss Air. 2 business class tickets, Boston to Zurich. November 5th, a 9 p.m. departure. The return date was empty. He's planning his escape, Mr. Thorne said. He thinks he's planning his escape, Morales corrected. He swiveled his monitor to face me. The surveillance photo was blown up, Julian's face. Undeniable. The timestamp, the $75,000 cash delivery. He's using your own investment to live with her, Morales said quietly. I stared at the image of the man I married, the man who swore he would always protect me, the man now dismantling our life to begin another with his pregnant lover, while I hid in a friend's apartment, a ghost watching my own world be auctioned off. How much more of this? I asked, my voice thin. How much longer must I pretend to be gone? Morales and Thorne shared a look before Thorne opened a new folder. We flagged the payment from Julian's Shell Corp, a detective named Chen said. $75,000 sent on October 6th to an outfit called Aegis Solutions. They're a private security firm in Miami. We spoke with the owner this morning. The air in the room was heavy. A security firm? The kind people hire to make problems vanish. Chen's voice was somber. Mrs. Vance, Julian didn't just want to divorce you. He paid professionals to have you removed. By the 6th day, we knew who my husband had paid to end my life. On the 7th, I read the proposal which detailed their exact plan. Detective Chen came to the condo at 4 p.m. on November 12th, holding a tablet with a look that promised a hard but necessary truth. He placed the tablet on the counter, showing a mugshot. Sergei Orlov, 52, former FSB, discharged in 2010. A history of arrests for over a decade, from extortion to aggravated assault. No convictions, witnesses always change their stories. His reputation in Miami is that he solves difficult problems. I stared at the picture, a bald head, lifeless eyes, a thick scar that cut across his jaw. He looked just as evil as you would imagine. We picked him up at a Miami hotel this morning, Morales continued. The $75,000 wire from your husband was traced to a holding company registered to Orlov. We have the transaction receipts, we have their encrypted messages. A contract? My voice was barely audible. An email chain. It was heavily coded, but our cyber team broke it. Your husband detailed his needs. Orlov stated his price. $75,000 in advance, $150,000 after, wired to an account in the Cayman Islands. $225,000. The value Julian placed on my life. Detective Morales aimed the tablet at me. It displayed a live feed from an interrogation room. Plain walls, a metal table. Orlov sat on one side, cuffed. Morales' partner, a sharp detective named Riley, sat across from him. A lawyer in a cheap suit sat beside Orlov, looking completely detached. This is happening now, Detective Morales said. You're watching it live. Are you ready? I nodded. I was not remotely ready, but I nodded anyway. For an hour, Orlov told them nothing. The $75,000 was for risk analysis. He had never met Julian Vance. He said the messages were fake. Then Detective Riley slid a folder across the table. Your burner phone logs. On October 2nd at 5 p.m., you received a call from a number registered to Julian Vance. The call was 4 minutes long. Tell me about the call. Orlov just scowled at the folder. Silence. We can make a deal, Sergey. Detective Riley's voice was even. Conspiracy to commit will get you 20 years. You could be out in 15. Or we try you for the attempt and you'll die inside. Your call. Orlov glanced at his lawyer, who gave a nearly invisible shrug. Orlov leaned back. What is it you want to know? I met Julian Vance at a tech summit in Dubai last July. Orlov's voice was a flat monotone, as if he were reading an instruction manual. He told me a personal problem was threatening a major merger. He needed a final solution that would seem like a tragic accident. I told him accidents are expensive. He said the price was not an issue. Riley leaned in. So, what was the plan? The plan involved their trip to the Cape on the 12th. On a very isolated road, it's simple to stage a single vehicle accident with no one around. The cover story, he swerved to avoid a deer and hit a tree. She would have believed it was one last weekend away before the baby. He would play the heartbroken widower, the lucky survivor. The bankruptcy would seem like a tragic business failure, not a crime. The company liquidated. He'd be gone, financially ruined by a failed drug trial. A sad story. It happens with biotech firms. They take huge risks. Companies go under. The investigation would find nothing. The ruling would be a business loss. The creditors would get almost nothing. He would keep his 8 million. I gripped my phone. My sister Iva's voice was sharp. This isn't just a financial crime. The detective confirmed, no. Julian had sounded triumphant. On November 9th, around midnight, a secure message was sent. It said, Isabel, the money is secured. It's done. The company is finished. Our new chapter begins now. He ended it with a king of chess emoji. A king. Detective Morales showed his tablet, displaying the saved text. Julian's message, clear as day. The company is finished. Our new chapter begins now. And the king, so arrogant, so cruel. I'd seen him use it a dozen times, after securing a new patent, after a positive article was published. I had never seen it used like this, as if my whole life was a chess game he had just won. What was his justification for the accounts? Detective Morales asked. He said it was for asset protection, for our family security. Then he locked me out of everything. Morales leaned closer. Clara, I need you to be very specific. Are you certain that Julian Vance committed fraud, promised Isabel a future abroad, moved your joint assets to secret accounts, and then texted her to confirm it was time to leave after his company collapsed? That is precisely what happened. And you will testify to this? Clara glanced at her attorney, who gave a firm, slow nod. Yes, Clara stated. I will give a full statement. Detective Morales set down the tablet, his eyes on me. Mrs. Vance, we have conspiracy, wire fraud, and asset concealment. Your husband is facing serious charges, but we need you to help. He must believe you are still unaware. Ava stood and pulled a key from her purse. My extra key to our townhome was there. The one with a small silver sailboat charm I found on the Cape 2 years ago. Tomorrow, Morales said, 9 o'clock at night. You will enter the fundraiser alone. 2 detectives, 6 agents, and you. Julian is scheduled to be there. He's on the host committee. Isabel will be with him. We are taking both of them into custody. Isabel, I whispered. She's a co-conspirator, Morales replied. She knew he was hiding assets, knew the bankruptcy was a fabrication, knew about the hidden accounts. She is a material witness. I looked at the key in Ava's hand. The key to the home I fled last month, the home I shared with the man who was planning to abandon me and our unborn child. Is this really the only way? Olivia asked. I wasn't certain. I hated this, walking into our home like a stranger. But I gripped the small, unmarked USB drive she handed me. Yes, before I described seeing my husband Ethan, the man who plotted to erase me, smiling like he'd won, you need to understand. Let me know you're still with me, because this gets heavy. This is a true story and the pain is real. Take a moment if you need to, okay? Let's do this. The condo looked untouched. The Mies van der Rohe chairs I adored now seemed cold, unwelcoming. The scent of cypress from a bonsai tree we bought in Kyoto. The view of Lake Michigan where he first said he loved me. Everything was the same, but the man inside was a ghost, or that's what his creditors were meant to think. Detective Russo met me on the street at 8:31 p.m. He was a quiet, steady presence beside me. My sister Olivia was on my other side. Behind us, 4 officers in plain clothes split up, 2 heading for the service exit, 2 blending into the gala's muted chatter. Ready? Russo asked. I wasn't. I'd never be ready, but I nodded sharply. Russo spoke to the maitre d'. We're with Mr. Hayes. A few taps on a tablet. Of course. This way. We moved in silence. We passed a jazz trio playing softly. Mr. Hayes is in the skyline room. He gestured down a private hall. Not another word was said. Russo held out his hand. I gave him the building fob, the one with the small leather tag, the key to the warrant. He slipped it into his pocket and we continued. We entered the room. The room smelled of expensive scotch and Isabel's perfume. Tuberose, rich and cloying, the opposite of the simple gardenia scent I wore. The room was dark, the city glittered outside the panoramic window, and there at a secluded table were Ethan and Isabel, laughing with a man in a sharp suit, their faces lit by a tablet displaying wire transfer receipts. They hadn't noticed us at all. Ethan was pointing, tapping the tablet screen. I could see the details even from the doorway. Cayman Islands, private charter, no return date. Isabel rested her head on his shoulder. Her hand was on her own belly, the slight curve of her 5-month pregnancy visible beneath her silk dress. I stepped into the doorway, into the dim light, right in his line of sight. Ethan, I said, just his name, my voice level, but it cut through their little world. His head snapped up, his bourbon glass tipped, spilling amber across the pristine linen. For a few seconds, he just stared, his mind catching up. His face turned ashen, a pale, sick-looking color. His jaw went slack. No words came out. Then Isabel saw me. Her eyes went wide. She let out a short, choked cry of pure terror and shoved her chair back so hard it crashed to the floor as she scrambled to her feet. Ethan stood, clutching the table for support. No, he whispered. No, you're supposed to be at the spa retreat in Sedona. I took another step forward, feeling Olivia's hand on my back. I know, I said, my voice quiet and even, like I was correcting a child's mistake. That was the story, right? You were supposed to be grieving. His voice was a ragged whisper, the bankruptcy notice. I saw the email. I wasn't grieving, Ethan. I was with the SEC, explaining the $15 million hedge fund you drained through offshore accounts, the one your partners never knew existed. He shook his head, a frantic, repetitive motion, like he could just deny me away. You don't understand. I had to. Explain what? That you had a fixer in Panama creating false trade logs? That when the federal inquiry began, you messaged her saying your new life was starting? That you toasted Ethan? That you celebrated with her? I glanced at Isabel, who was frozen by the window, staring at me like I was a ghost. That you planned your escape on our life savings while our family was planning our gender reveal party. Ethan moved toward me. Russo was quicker, blocking his path. Stay put, Russo said. His voice was calm, absolute. Ethan's wild eyes shot past Russo to me. You don't get it. I did this for us. The market was collapsing. I couldn't lose everything. I cut him off. You did this for $15 million, and you ruined good people in the process. Every time I spoke, Ethan tried to bolt, not toward me, but for a side door, any way out. He took 3 strides before 2 officers materialized from the hall. Their hands were at their sides, but the intent was clear. Hands where I can see them. Ethan froze, then turned, looking at me one last time, cornered and enraged. Then, Detective Rousseau was behind him, securing his arms. the sharp click of handcuffs echoing in the now silent room. Ethan Hayes, Russo said, you're under arrest for securities fraud and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Do you understand these rights as I have read them to you? Ethan said nothing, his gaze locked on me. Mr. Hayes, Russo repeated. Do you understand? Yes. The sound was choked. They led him to the door, passing so close I smelled his aftershave. The one I bought him in Paris. He stopped, trying to turn back to me. Chloe, please, you have to understand. I never wanted. You wanted the cash, I said. You saw a crisis and called it an opportunity. And when you thought you gotten away with it, you celebrated. Don't tell me what you wanted, Ethan. I know exactly what you wanted. They escorted him out, down the hall to a service elevator. Isabel was still by the window, weeping silently. A female officer approached her calmly. Ma'am, we need you to come with us. We have a few questions. I didn't know, Isabel whispered. I swear. I didn't know I thought the money was from a good investment. We can discuss that downtown, the officer said, her voice firm but not unkind. They helped her get her purse, then led her out a different exit. She never looked at me. Couldn't, probably. I stood alone in the skyline room. Our skyline room. The table where we'd signed our marriage license. The booth where I'd told him I was pregnant. The window where we'd watched the fireworks. Olivia came to my side. Are you okay? I couldn't speak. I had no words left. In the glass, I saw the reflection of Ethan being guided into an unmarked car. He was looking up at our window, just staring, as if he could somehow figure out how his perfect plan had fallen apart, how I was still here. I met his gaze, refusing to look away. The car pulled into traffic, its lights off. He's on his way downtown, Detective Russo said softly. I just nodded, feeling no satisfaction, just a deep, weary ache from a week spent dismantling his web of lies. Russo told me Ethan wouldn't say a thing until his lawyer arrived. It made no difference. We had the encrypted messages, the fraudulent trade orders, the hidden Cayman accounts. The next morning, in a cold observation room, Ethan said 3 words that changed everything. I want a deal. I watched from behind the two-way glass. Ethan sat under a single harsh light, his hands cuffed to the table. He looked diminished. It was October 23rd, just after 9 a.m. I hadn't slept. Detective Russo stood next to me, holding a cold cup of coffee. Across from Ethan sat Assistant U.S. Attorney Cole. Beside him was his lawyer, a man named Davies, in his early 50s, wearing an Italian suit that broadcast his fee. My client will offer a full confession, Davies said, in exchange for a lesser charge. Securities fraud, 5 years. Yusek Cole, on a screen in our room, spoke into his mic. Attempted murder, multiple counts of wire fraud, no deal. His cooperation will be noted. We'll take it into account at sentencing. Davies leaned in, whispering intensely to Ethan. Ethan's shoulders slumped, and he gave a small, defeated nod. He'll cooperate fully, Davies announced. USA Cole opened the file, sliding a stack of bank statements across the table. Walk me through the fund's collapse, Cole ordered. Start with last spring. Ethan just stared at the papers. His voice was barely audible when he began. Last April, I lost everything. Be specific. Almost $2.5 million on a bad derivatives bet. I was using Chloe's trust fund as leverage. Her grandfather left it to her 3 years ago. Over $8 million. She let me manage it. I thought I could double it. I bet big on tech futures. The market turned. AUSA Cole jotted something down, and I owed $500,000 to a private lender, a man named Victor. He made it clear that if I didn't pay him back by Christmas, he would... Ethan's voice faltered, his jaw clenching. He would come after my family. So you decided your pregnant wife was the solution. Ethan winced. I didn't think of it like that. I just figured if she had an accident, the life insurance would clear my debts and let me start fresh. My thinking was clouded. When did the policy start? Mid-June. I found a wealth manager online. I looked up things like boating accident death benefits. How fast do they pay out? I secured a policy through a private underwriter for $8 million. I completed the forms, faked Isabel's e-signature, and submitted it all. It was active by July 15th, and that's when you finalized the idea. Leo nodded slowly. I considered a few scenarios. A car accident, too many variables, a robbery gone bad, too chaotic. A fall from our boat on the Charles seemed neat. Our place on Beacon Hill has too many eyes. Then the river came to me. It was isolated on the water, secure and simple to stage a tragic accident. When did Chloe Vance come into the picture? Early August. I knew her from the lab. We began speaking in private. She was driven. We talked about a new life, a clean break. I sent her the initial wire transfer on August 22nd. What was her function? Chloe was to join us at the marina on October 10th. Her job was to loosen a pin on the boat's guardrail. We'd go for a sunset cruise. I'd fake a stumble near the compromised railing during a large wake. It would look like a horrible misfortune. And you were both comfortable with this. Leo's face hardened. I had no other path forward. When did you propose this cruise? Around mid-September. I told Isabel it was a surprise. One last romantic trip before the baby. She was overjoyed. She had total faith in me. His voice wavered. I moved the last of her trust fund that same week. Put it in a new holding account I knew I'd need it for the aftermath. October 3rd. Tell me about that day. Leo closed his eyes. I was getting our jackets when I sent Chloe a text to confirm. At our home, I watched her get ready. I thought, this is the last time I'll see her so happy. Then I went to my study. I received a text from Chloe around 6:30 that evening. She asked if we were still on. I was typing a reply when I saw my wife in the doorway holding my open laptop. The entire plan was exposed. What was your mental state? Leo looked up, his eyes meeting Inspector Hayes's. Rage. The word was frigid. Rage! Inspector Hayes repeated. Yes, I phoned Chloe at once. I told her it was off, that my wife had found out and ruined everything. I didn't have to follow through. She sabotaged my future. I pressed my fingers to my mouth. Detective Miller rested a hand on my arm. Why rage? Hayes insisted. Your wife and your baby were safe. Leo was silent for a full minute. When he spoke again, his voice was empty. Because I wouldn't have to be the bad guy. Because I could have lived with it as a tragedy, an act of nature. Not my own doing, but you had already paid your coworker to assist in her murder, I am aware. You had already committed fraud, moved her assets, and spent months planning her death. I'm aware. Then answer me, Mr. Sterling. Inspector Hayes's voice became a flat, chilling whisper without any feeling. Did you feel any remorse when you were caught? When you knew your wife and child would live? Leo stared at the table, at the plans that had become his downfall. I felt trapped, he said. Is that the same as being evil? Inspector Hayes closed the folder. Yes, on October 4th, 2025, the Suffolk County DA charged Leo Sterling with conspiracy to commit murder and grand larceny. Bail was denied. His trial was set for the winter. I stayed in the observation room long after he was led away, my eyes fixed on the empty seat where my husband had confessed. Isabel, are you okay? Miller asked gently. I couldn't speak. I didn't have the words. The man I loved, the father of my child, my husband, had just calmly detailed his months-long scheme to kill me. He hired his lover to help him arrange my death on the water. He felt rage when his plot collapsed because it meant his exposure. And underneath the sickening shock, a new feeling grew. Relief. Because I was alive. Because he was a failure. Because in 3 months, I would step into a courtroom and show the world precisely who he was. I had 3 months to become the woman who survived. 3 months after I left our Beacon Hill townhouse, I walked into courtroom 9A of the Suffolk County Courthouse and faced my husband, who wore an ill-fitting suit. He looked gaunt, I had lost my partner, my future, and all the trust I ever had in my own judgment. It was June 5th, 2024, a Wednesday. The air in the conference room was thick with expensive cologne. Our mediator, a woman named Avery Vance, had a calm that felt practiced after decades in family law. The jury box was replaced by a line of leather chairs. My brother Leo sat beside me, his presence a silent promise of support. Julian sat across the table beside his lawyer, a shark in a tailored suit whose smile never reached his eyes. He refused to look at me, a silence he'd maintained since I found the plans for the penthouse. At 9 o'clock, the mediator cleared her throat. The arbitration of Clara Hayes and Julian Croft was now in session. We will now hear opening statements. Adia Chen stood up. She was 39, with a decade of prosecuting in this building. She walked to the center of the room, her expression composed, and addressed the jury. This trial is about a profound level of betrayal hidden behind a mask of affection, she began. Leo Sterling professed his love to his pregnant wife, planned a romantic boat trip, and knew his mistress was sabotaging the vessel. When his wife uncovered the scheme, saving herself and her unborn child, Leo Sterling felt no relief. He felt rage. You will hear a recording of him admitting to that rage. She paused, letting the gravity of her words sink in. You will hear from the woman Leo paid to help him arrange his wife's fatal accident. You will see the fraudulent $8 million life insurance policy taken out just weeks before. You will see text messages between Leo and his mistress from the day he planned to kill his wife. And you will hear his own words recorded saying, "It was meant to be the perfect accident." Chen turned, fixing her gaze on Leo for a moment before speaking to the jury again. The defense will claim that Leo Sterling is not a violent person, and they are correct. He wanted a plausible accident to do the work. And when his scheme was unraveled, not by the police, but by the very woman he meant to kill, his first reaction was to deny everything. What you have before you, members of the jury, is a calculated plot. It involves deceit, asset theft, and a conspiracy to financially benefit from a man's expecting wife's death. She took her seat. Leo Sterling's counsel, Mr. Davies, stood. His tone was smooth, calm, and deliberate. This is a story of a husband's terrible choices, not a criminal plot to harm his family. He argued that Leo never put Isabel in danger. The revelation of his affair was a personal mistake, not a scheme my client engineered. Having a desperate thought is not the same as committing a crime. The prosecution must prove Leo Sterling took concrete actions to harm Isabel Sterling. The facts will show he did not. He made foolish plans he never carried out. He confided in a woman he never permitted to act. When his wife's own brother discovered the account, my client was as stunned as anyone. He gestured at Leo. You will hear about his professional pressures, his affair, his ambition. You will hear the story of an industry leader who felt trapped and made a series of awful choices. But you will not see proof he acted on them because he was stopped. Davies sat down. The courtroom was silent. On January 9th, the prosecution called Alex Reyes to the stand. Leo was 38, a biotech prodigy with a public charm and a ruthless reputation built in the world of venture capital. He adjusted his tie, his voice a calm, curated tenor. I found the encrypted files on our home server, Isabel said, her voice shaking only once. On October 3rd, 2025, the project was called Contingency. She continued. It laid out his whole strategy. He would move my investments into a shell company, then create a narrative of a public breakdown for me. He wanted to be positioned as the sole suitable guardian for our daughter. Isabel recalled a memo from September 12th. Leo wrote, "It's time. She's a liability to the brand. The legacy is threatened with her in it." He had been satisfied with his choice of words. On January 10th, Isabel's brother, Alex, a sharp litigator, presented the evidence. He displayed Exhibit A, an updated trust for their daughter, naming a co-guardian she had never met, Chloe Vance. Exhibit B was a set of property deeds, a $2 million penthouse in the seaport bought by one of Leo's shadow companies. Exhibit C showed security logs from their Cape Cod home, dated September the 20th. Leo and Chloe on the deck, champagne glasses. He was kissing her, his hand resting on her stomach. Then Alex played a voice note from an email. Leo's voice was clear. Chloe understands the goal. She protects the dynasty. We're finally secure. The room felt heavy and cold. Alex asked, Isabel, did the defendant ever mention your or your baby's safety in these plans? Isabel just shook her head. No. She said he called her the variable. On January 12th, in that same office, Alex had called to me. Isabel, it's time. I rose and walked to the stand. My brother squeezed my hand. I took the oath, prepared for battle. I settled into my chair in the mediation room. Silence filled the space. I watched Ethan, who was staring at a framed architectural drawing on the wall. I'd been waiting 7 months for this day. But when I opened my mouth, the speech I had rehearsed vanished. Miss Albright offered me a moment. I shook my head. I'd spent too long preparing. I wouldn't back down now. Miss Albright began, her tone even. Mr. Hawthorne, please describe your relationship with Miss Thorne. But I cut in. I am 31, I stated, my voice growing stronger. I am a gallery curator. I have been Ethan's wife for 8 years. We were married on November 6th, 2015, at my family's estate in the Hamptons. Do you have children? His lawyer, Mr. Pierce, inquired. No, my voice cracked. We were unable to. We endured 3 failed IVF cycles in 2017, 2019, and 2021. The last attempt was a month before I lost my parents. Miss Albright let the quiet hang in the air. Pierce looked uneasy. Tell us about your parents. They were on a medical mission in Sudan on April 10th, 2021. Their transport plane went down. There were no survivors. I drew a deep breath. As their only child, I inherited their estate, which was merged into our joint holdings in May of 2021. And who managed those assets? Ethan did. He was the visionary behind Hawthorne Development. He handled all our investments. I trusted him with everything. Miss Albright paused. Maya, were you aware that Ethan established 3 shell corporations in the Cayman Islands in September 2022 without your knowledge? The room felt suddenly cold. I looked at Ethan. His expression was unreadable. No, I said. I found out 3 weeks ago through Miss Albright's forensic accountant. Miss Albright pushed a folder across the table. I'm submitting Exhibit F, incorporation documents from a Cayman firm dated September 10th, 2022, for asset protection. Objection, Pierce said. This is irrelevant. It establishes a pattern of deception and his underlying motive, Miss Albright retorted. The mediator allowed it. The papers were admitted. Miss Albright handed me a set. My hands were steady. Did Ethan ever discuss restructuring your joint portfolio? No, he said he was securing our investments for our baby's future. He promised our child would inherit an empire. Was that his real intention? No, he was hiding millions of my inheritance by June of 2023. Someone in the room gasped softly. Miss Albright continued. Maya, did his actions change around 2022 or 23? Yes, he started taking late-night calls on the balcony. He got a second phone that was always locked. He became cold. He moved into the guest suite in February 2023, saying he needed space to work. Did you confront him about this? Twice. The first time was in December 2022, and then in April 2023. Both times he told me, I run the business, Maya, you run the fundraisers. I chose to believe he was protecting us. Miss Albright's voice softened. And why did you choose to believe him? I looked directly at his legal team. Because he was the only family I had left. Because my parents were gone, our unborn babies were gone, And I couldn't bear the thought of losing my husband too. My voice broke. Miss Albright slid a glass of water toward me. Maya, she asked, if Ethan had told you he needed to reorganize your finances for the company's sake, would you have agreed? Of course, without hesitation, it was all ours. I would have supported any plan if he had just been honest with me. I risked a look at Ethan. He was staring out the window at the Chicago skyline. But he wasn't looking for a partner. He wanted me erased. Miss Albright gave a slight nod. I have no further questions at this time. Ethan's lawyer, a shark named Pierce, got to his feet. He was smooth, almost sympathetic. Mrs. Hawthorne, thank you for being so candid, he began. I want to be respectful, but I must ask a few questions to clarify the record. I understand. You stated you trusted your husband's business acumen? I did. And you now allege he violated that trust? I know he did. I know he planned to leave me with nothing and take my child. I know he used our money to buy his mistress a penthouse. Objection, Pierce said. That is speculation. Sustained, the mediator said. Maya, please stick to the facts. Pierce continued. Mrs. Hawthorne, isn't it true that you and Ethan discussed separating in March of 2023? My whole body stiffened. I suggested marriage counseling. Ethan refused. And did he not say, and I'm quoting here, a divorce would ruin me? Yes, he said that. And what was your understanding of that statement? I looked him in the eye. At the time, I thought he meant emotionally, that he couldn't lose our marriage. Now I know he meant his business. A divorce would force a liquidation of my shares. If I were deemed unstable, he would gain total control. Pierce was unruffled. But you concede the marriage was failing. Yes. You concede Ethan was under immense pressure at work. Yes. And you concede that ending the marriage was on the table. I suggested we save it. He was the one drafting a blueprint to destroy my life. Objection, Pierce snapped. Overruled, the mediator said. Mrs. Hawthorne is entitled to her perspective. Pierce sat down. Miss Albright stood one last time. Maya, just one final piece of evidence. We recovered a draft of an email from Ethan's server. I'd like to project it. She put the image on the screen. The words loomed over the room. To the Hawthorne Family Trust draft, dated September 15th, 2023. Subject, legacy and transition. Chloe is pregnant. She will give me an heir. By the time my son is born, Maya's reputation will be ruined, her access to funds cut off. She will be framed as an unstable mother. The Hawthorne legacy is safe. The old branch has been pruned. She will never know what it truly cost. A dreadful silence descended. I heard a woman behind me choke back a sob. I glanced over my shoulder and saw Ethan's mother, my mother-in-law, her hand clamped over her mouth, her face pale. Miss Albright addressed the mediator. This email was recovered from a server Mr. Hawthorne had professionally scrubbed. He drafted it to his own family's trust. He didn't send it, but he perfected it. She turned back to me. Maya, did you have any idea your husband was orchestrating a campaign to systematically destroy you? No, I whispered. Thank you. That concludes our opening statement. The defense was set to begin on January 17th. The following session was scheduled for January 20th. I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining Chloe holding my son. Then I'd wake with a jolt, remembering I uncovered this all because I questioned a charge from an interior designer I didn't recognize. The proceedings resumed at 9 a.m. on January 20th. Miss Albright stood, composed and ready. Ethan Hawthorne had a plan, she said, to discredit his wife, seize her inheritance, and take their unborn child. When he found a younger woman at his architecture firm, he didn't honor his vows. He opened offshore accounts. He saw his wife's pregnancy not as a blessing, but as a deadline for his scheme. He called her a family asset and a non-performing holding. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not a man in crisis. That is a predator liquidating his family. The defense will say Ethan never laid a hand on his wife. That is true. He hired lawyers and accountants to do his dirty work. They will argue his plans were just words in a file. That is false. He acted on them, moving millions from their joint ventures to untraceable accounts. That is wire fraud. It is conspiracy. And it is profound psychological abuse. After concluding her opening, the prosecutor rested. Ethan's older brother, Robert, took the stand, his voice a quiet rumble. My brother, Ethan, is a fool, he said. He broke his marriage vows. He was careless with the fortune his wife's family helped him secure. But he is not a monster. He never intended to destroy Maya. He never filed for a competency hearing or tried to get power of attorney. A hateful thought is not a criminal act. The prosecution has shown you angry words, but not a single concrete step taken to separate his wife from her child, because no such step was ever taken. The affair was a terrible error. The finances were unconventional, but they were not illegal. Ethan's defense was flimsy. The fund transfers were a risky investment strategy, he argued, not theft. Was it desperate? Yes. Was it proof of criminal intent? Also, yes. You just need to create that sliver of doubt, my lawyer had said. The jury deliberated for 12 days. I stayed in a Chicago hotel suite. My friend Sarah brought me tea each morning. Detective Miller from the Financial Crimes Unit sent a text every evening to see how I was. The gears of justice grind slowly. On October 5th at 9:40 a.m., my phone vibrated. A text from the prosecutor's office. Verdict is in. Be at the courthouse by 10:30. I arrived at 10:15. The courtroom was jammed. Reporters, Ethan's parents, Sarah and Detective Miller were there. Ethan sat at the defendant's table in a rumpled suit. He refused to look at me. At 10:47, Judge Ramirez entered. We all rose. He sat. We sat. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman, a retired accountant named Mr. Cole, stood up holding a piece of paper. We have, Your Honor. On count 1, conspiracy to commit wire fraud. What is your finding? Mr. Cole looked directly at Ethan. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ethan Hawthorne, guilty. The room erupted. The judge hammered his gavel for order. I felt Sarah's hand grip my arm. I couldn't seem to breathe. On count 2, grand larceny. What is your finding? Guilty. On count 3, money laundering. Guilty. On count 4, embezzlement. Guilty. Ethan's entire frame seemed to crumple. His attorney put a comforting hand on his shoulder. He flinched away. Judge Ramirez dismissed the jury with thanks and scheduled sentencing for October 19th. I fled the courthouse into a sea of flashing lights. Reporters yelled my name. I said nothing. Detective Harding gave me a firm look. Maya was sobbing. I felt nothing. 2 weeks on, the courtroom was quieter, less media. Marcus was in a standard-issue jumpsuit. He looked broken. His fingers trembled. The judge invited victim statements. I rose. I went to the stand. I kept my eyes on the judge. Your Honor, I'm Eleanor Vance. I am 33. I am an architect. I'm carrying my first child, due in 2 months. I have a friend who calls every morning to check on me. I have a detective who believed me when I showed him the emails. I took a steadying breath. My voice didn't waver. Marcus didn't just want me gone. He wanted to dissolve a partnership. He wanted my inheritance, our home, my life, all of it gone. So he and his partner could start over. His plan wasn't just against one person. It was against a mother and his own child. An elderly woman in the front row pressed a tissue to her lips. His mother, her gaze met mine, full of shame, then fell. Every day I live, and every day my son thrives, is my choice to be more than his failed project. I will not be a write-off for Marcus, not me and not my son. I returned to my chair. Judge Alistair took off his spectacles. He stared at Marcus for a long moment. Mr. Thorne, he began, in my 23 years on this bench, I've seen crimes born of rage and greed, but I've never witnessed a man orchestrate his pregnant wife's demise with the detachment of a corporate merger. You now have a lifetime to reflect on that. He replaced his glasses. For count 1, conspiracy to commit murder, I sentence you to 20 years. For count 2, wire fraud, 15 years to run consecutively. For counts 3 and 4, 10 years served concurrently. Your total sentence will be 45 years in the Massachusetts correctional system. Marcus would be 81 before parole was even a possibility. A bailiff led him away. He never looked back. A week after the verdict, his COO, Isabel Rowe, accepted a deal. She pled guilty to obstruction, earning 18 months in a minimum security facility and 3 years of probation. The court also ordered her to pay $50,000 in restitution. Her baby boy, born in November 2023, was sent to live with her parents. From my Seaport condo, I streamed her sentencing. Isabel cried, claiming she believed Marcus's plans were just angry fantasy, not real intentions. The judge wasn't convinced. Neither was I. I walked out of the Suffolk County Courthouse on October 5th, 2024, at 11:32 a.m. The sun was blinding. Reporters shouted things I ignored. Detective Harding gave a brief nod from the top of the stairs. Maya held my arm, but it didn't feel like a win. I felt like I'd barely survived a plane crash. For a month I was a prisoner in my new apartment. I had left the brownstone Marcus and I had renovated. I couldn't bear the bedroom where he slept next to me while plotting my death. I found a 2-bedroom rental in Back Bay with a city view and no memories. Maya brought over meals. Detective Harding texted me daily. You good? I wasn't. I always replied yes. On November 3rd, Maya took me to my first therapist. Dr. Chen's office was on a peaceful street over a bakery. Her hair was streaked with silver, her eyes calm and wise. She did not ask me to recount the events. She asked what I needed to heal. I want the nightmares about the open window to stop, I told her. She nodded. We can start there. The dream was always identical. I mean our old brownstone. A man's shadow crosses the unlocked bedroom window. I'm frozen. I can't make a sound. The air is thick with the smell of the harbor. Marcus stands across from me, watching, his face a complete blank. I always wake up with my heart pounding. Dr. Chen diagnosed it as PTSD. She said it was a normal response to profound trauma. She told me we had to face the fear for the dreams to end. She taught me how to breathe again. She introduced me to grounding exercises. 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch. It was a small comfort, but the fear of being alone was suffocating. In December, I attempted to go to my firm's holiday event. I got dressed and called a ride, but halfway to the venue, my throat constricted. My hands began to shake. I told the driver to take me home. I went back to my silent apartment and checked every lock twice. Dr. Chen assured me that was fine. You weren't ready, and that is okay. Healing is not a linear process. On December 12th, there was a breakthrough. I had been seeing her twice a week for 6 weeks. We had covered Marcus, the trial, Isabel, and the incriminating emails. But I hadn't touched on my own sense of guilt. I can't shake the feeling, I said, that if I weren't so naive, so trusting, I would have seen it all sooner. Dr. Chen tilted her head. Why do you believe that? Because the clues were all there. The secret finances, the long nights at his office. Had I confronted him, maybe he wouldn't have taken it so far. I began to cry a quiet, heavy sorrow. Dr. Chen passed me a tissue. Eleanor, she said gently, you are not responsible for his actions. You are responsible for your own safety, and you protected yourself and your child. That is not naivete. That is strength. I cried harder, but it felt like a dam breaking. In January, I joined a support group. Survivors of intimate partner violence met on Tuesdays in a library basement. The group was small, maybe 10 of us. The facilitator, a counselor named David, started every session the same way. This is a safe space to share your story. I simply listened for the first 3 meetings. I heard from Laura, 42, whose ex-husband had installed a tracker in her car. I heard from Tom, 39, whose former girlfriend cleaned out their joint bank account and vanished. He was inside his own house when an intruder he had paid walked in through the unlocked back door. The payment was to fake a home invasion gone wrong. During the fourth week, David invited any new members to speak. I took a breath. My name is Eleanor, I said. My husband hired a man to murder me, and when that plan failed, he intended to do it himself. The room was utterly still. Then Laura reached over and took my hand. You are safe with us, she said. That is what's important. I started writing that January. At first it was just notes, fragments, the hollow look in Marcus's smile. The exact words from Detective Harding's initial call. Ma'am, are you in a place where you can speak privately? By February, I had 60 pages. By March, 200. I called it Asset Forfeiture, a memoir. Dr. Chen told me the writing was a way to reclaim my own narrative. He does not get to write your final chapter. On April 1st, I emailed the manuscript to a literary agent in New York named Julia Vance. She replied in 2 days. Eleanor, I read this in one night. It is one of the most powerful stories I have ever read. Let me see what's possible. 3 weeks later, a major publisher sent an offer. A 2-book deal, my memoir, and a guide for women on how to spot financial and emotional abuse. The advance was $150,000. I texted Maya. I texted Detective Harding. I texted my brother, Leo. Leo was livid. Leo and I had a standing dinner date each month. He had quit his job at a finance firm in September after 15 years. He said he could no longer work in that part of the city. I almost liked him, he said, swirling his wine. We were in a small restaurant in the North End, near his apartment. If Marcus had been more clever, if you hadn't checked his laptop that day, you would still be in the dark. But I'm not, I said. He nodded, because I had finally understood the reality he'd suspected for months. We clinked our glasses. Maya was my anchor. She called me every single morning. Her husband Ben brought me pasta when I couldn't eat. He would sit on my sofa while I stared at home renovation shows, unable to form words. He never told me to get over it. He just let me be. On my birthday, he arrived with cannolis and a bottle of sparkling cider. You can't have this, I mumbled. A little won't hurt, he said, and we have reasons to celebrate. We celebrated my new place. We celebrated our friendship. We celebrated my freedom. Then I saw the email from Marcus's lawyer. Subject, Asset Settlement, October 3rd, 2025. Date, October 2nd, 2024. Dear Mrs. Thorne, we are drafting a proposal that honors your prenup regarding the $3.2 million Seaport condominium. We trust you'll find this arrangement acceptable. Your signature is the only remaining requirement. Regards, Robert Peterson. The words blurred. Ben leaned over my shoulder. What now, Elle? He wants me to sign everything away, I whispered. The condo on our anniversary. I hadn't been to that building since the day I left him. I couldn't even look at the designs. We had spent weekends planning the nursery. Ben was driving, my best friend Maya in the passenger seat, me in the back. The modern glass tower appeared the same as it had a year ago. Floor 52, the whole thing. The same cold lobby, the same imposing modern art. I sat in the car watching the revolving doors, and my stomach churned. I can't go in there, I whispered. Maya turned around. She was in scrubs now, professional, focused, no longer just a grad school friend. She'd started a new job 2 weeks ago, but her eyes held the same fierce loyalty. Yes, you can, she said. That man needs to see you. He needs to know his money can't just make this disappear. You're the one thing he can't buy his way out of. Leo's hand rested on my arm. You've got this, Clara. I took a steadying breath. I walked past the minimalist sculptures and the framed cover of him in Forbes. I remembered the night I found the blueprints on his laptop, a separate life sketched out in architectural drafts. The room felt like a tomb. A mahogany table stretched before a panoramic view of the San Francisco Bay. I saw the documents detailing Julian Croft's 32% stake in the development firm. I saw the purchase order for the waterfront penthouse, title held in a shell corporation. White orchids stood in a vase, their beauty feeling cold and alien. One click on a subfolder named G's Place had shattered my world in minutes. 4 people sat on his side of the table, his 2 lawyers, a paralegal, and his new assistant. Arthur Finch, his lead counsel, rose to his feet. I recognized him from photos at charity galas. His suit was bespoke, his watch a statement. "We appreciate your presence today," he began. His tone was smooth, but his eyes darted around the room. "Last year, my client suffered a profound lapse in personal judgment. $300,000 in marital funds were used for an undisclosed property acquisition. We are here to finalize a dissolution." He glanced at the empty chair beside Julian. Julian's former protege, a brilliant young architect, was now working for a rival firm in London. The kid had called Julian his mentor. That kind of loyalty was something Julian had lost forever. The attorney's voice faltered slightly before he sat. At 10:30, a forensic accountant began her presentation. She was a woman in her 60s, no nonsense. She adjusted her glasses. "Let me state plainly what should have been acknowledged last year. We are deeply sorry. Our audit confirmed a systematic diversion of community assets beginning on March 15th, 2023. This was a breach of fiduciary duty, but more than that, a deep personal betrayal. The paper trail confirms the intent. New financial structures can be created, but they cannot mend this damage." "I am sorry," she concluded. A few of the lawyers on his side shifted, looking uneasy. She detailed the spending with cold precision, a pattern of hidden accounts and luxury purchases with no shared benefit. It was a calculated deception. At 9:17 a.m., 1 year to the minute I found the files, my lawyer spoke my name. "We have a response to their offer," he said. "Clara Hayes was supposed to be designing a life with him. Because of her husband's choices and her discovery of them, she is here today. Her future was deliberately jeopardized. Her husband attempted to defraud her to fund a separate life. Clara, is there anything you wish to say?" I walked to the head of the table. My hands were trembling. I looked at the chair where my husband sat, a stranger to me now. "My name is Clara Hayes. A year ago, I was designing our future. I had blueprints for a nursery. I was building our home. But a woman named Genevieve had other plans with my husband, and a misplaced design file told me everything. My marriage vanished." I paused, glancing at Leo. His jaw was set. "I am here because the truth was exposed. $300,000 of our shared funds were not. When he learned that I knew, he didn't apologize. He treated it like a hostile takeover. He thought that money would buy my silence. He tried to use our unborn child as leverage. I'm sorry that I'm not easily discarded. I'm sorry my name is on the title of our home. I'm sorry my husband saw our marriage as a line of credit, but I will build a life that honors my own name. The world will know who I am, not who he was." I sat down. The room was silent. Then Leo started to clap. Then my lawyer. My entire team was on their feet. My tears started and would not stop. After the session, a woman approached me. She looked elegant and tired. "My husband is one of Julian's business partners. Thank you for not backing down." Another woman touched my arm. "My son was a junior developer at his company. Thank you." She showed me a photo on her phone of a young, smiling woman. This was Amelia, his last personal assistant. A single mom, just 26. He transferred her to the Dubai office after she raised concerns. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a shared pain. "When I heard he used your money to pay her severance, I wanted to scream at you. I wanted to ask why you got a settlement when she was silenced. I didn't know what to say, but I saw your evidence. He didn't replace her with you. He just repeated his pattern. You aren't his victim. You're his successor." For the first time since last August, I felt a flicker of peace. My brother sat with me in the car. The 20-minute drive from downtown San Francisco to my new apartment felt like a lifetime. He held my hand as the engine started. My sister sent a text. "You're finally free." The city lights blurred past the window. I closed my eyes and saw a sunlit nursery that would never be. But when I opened them, the world was still there. 3 months later, an article was published that changed my path. My new design firm, Sanctuary Spaces, was featured in a major architectural journal on October 2nd, 2024. By October 12th, we were the most talked about new firm on the West Coast. We landed over $60,000 in contracts that first week. My business partner called me at dawn. Clara, it's working. You're giving people back their homes, and they are listening. I cried, not for the money, but for the story, my story. Not Julian's, not the lawyers, not the tabloids, mine. On October 22nd, I was a guest on a popular design podcast. The host asked the inevitable question: how do you recover when a partner tries to systematically erase you? I leaned forward. I survived because a woman named Amelia told me I wasn't alone. I survived because I finally listened to my own intuition. And I survived because I refused to let him design my future. The episode went viral. The next day, we were number one. On October 28th, I set a plan in motion. I launched the Threshold Foundation, a nonprofit to help women secure their independence after financial abuse. The foundation provided pro bono financial advisors and emergency grants, from $500 to $5,000 for women who needed a way out. I seeded it with half of my settlement, $500,000. My brother became the CFO. We brought on a team of fierce female advocates. I was building something that would have been impossible while I was with Julian. My therapist, Dr. Anya Sharma, noted, "You're creating the escape routes you never had. The value of that is immeasurable." I promoted the launch online. By December, we had raised over $150,000 in public donations. One woman wrote to me, "Your story gave me the courage to look at my own finances. My husband controlled everything. I thought I was trapped. Now I see a door." I read her words until they blurred. On November 21st, we held a fundraiser at a gallery in Sausalito. We auctioned 210 pieces of art. A woman showed me a picture of her sister, lost to domestic violence. "Thank you for giving women a voice," she whispered. At the end of the night, a man approached me. He was tall, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Hi," he said. "My name is Owen. I know this is forward, but your speech tonight, it really hit home for me." "What about it?" I asked. "My father was unfaithful, you know that. It tore my family apart. But building this life with you, with our child coming, proved I could escape that legacy. This is for our future." I was stunned into silence for a moment, only managing, "I know." He flashed a confident, reassuring grin. "Do you think we're ready for this?" I considered his question, then said, "Yes." We decided to start our family on June 10th in our Chicago penthouse. Our life was perfect for 3 years. Marcus was a brilliant tech entrepreneur. His sister Ava was 27, obsessed with his company, and always a little too curious. His mother had left his father back in March of 2001, the same month I lost my own grandfather. "This is perfect," I confessed. "This whole life with you, I don't think it's real." "Me neither," Julian admitted with a smile. "But maybe we're just two people who found our future and are building a family." Our baby shower was a week after. We were at the Chicago Art Institute. My sister Maya came with us. She held my hand tightly and asked, "Are you truly happy, Clara?" I told her, "Yes, of course." "Is he good to you?" she wondered. "Very, we're perfectly safe." I looked over at Julian and then back to Maya. I'm where I belong. On October 30th, I checked our shared accounts. Our spending had hit $243,000. Adding Julian's private card, we had a total of over $360,000. We had already funded the nursery and held 2 charity functions. More than 50 people had confirmed for the gender reveal party. I sat on the chaise in our penthouse and cried, not from joy, but from a sudden, overwhelming anxiety. Maya texted me, "You made this happen. You survived your past and built an amazing life. But be smart." I saved that text. On November the 5th, 2024, a receipt with a line item that stole my breath fell from his coat. "Regarding the Rossi residence, custom architectural plans. The message came from a private bank, with the payment tied to an account I didn't know existed. The first line read, "For Jay and I, our forever home." I looked at the paper, my hands starting to shake. I was aware Julian mentored a young architect. He spoke of an employee, Isabella, only one time. They met in 2021. He called it a professional mentorship. He told me she moved to the Miami office. The receipt continued. Isabella Rossi project approved on February 14th, 2024. The budget was for $1.2 million. I reopened my search on her social media following his ex-wife's recent cryptic post. "The patterns are too clear. I need your honesty." I closed the laptop and dialed Maya immediately. She answered on the first ring. "He's building a house with her," I said, my voice barely a whisper. It wasn't a mentorship. I called a lawyer back on November 9th. "I will help," I said, "whatever you need." Over the next 4 months, I learned everything about Isabella Rossi. She started at his firm in 2020. She was 26, a brilliant and ambitious designer. Her former roommate, Megan, told me that Isabella changed completely after she got Julian's attention. She grew distant and stopped returning her family's calls. Julian said she was just focused on her new promotion. Megan was never convinced. In January of 2024, Julian bought her a car. Megan saw the title. Julian said it was a company vehicle to retain her. On Valentine's Day, 2024, our anniversary, Isabella was seen wearing a new diamond necklace. The official report was a client celebration at a steakhouse. A pregnant wife, a busy husband, a terrible betrayal. Julian spent over $100,000 from the secret account that year. Maya always believed something was wrong, but she was only 29 and trying to support me, and nobody listened to her until she saw my story unfolding. In November of 2024, Maya saw a report from my lawyer. She saw the parallels in her own past. A controlling partner, hidden finances, a questionable affair. She reached out to a private investigator that December. The investigator pulled the records tied to a burner phone belonging to Julian. The forensics team found a hidden folder with texts from 2021 to 2024. An unsent email draft from February 10th, 2024 read, "Once C is busy with the baby, the new house will be our escape. I'll be out of this double life. No more pretending." The property was finalized on March 15th, 2024, just weeks before our first ultrasound. Her signature on the mortgage document was a clever digital copy. It was the same technique he had used on my own prenuptial paperwork 3 years later. My lawyer also reanalyzed flight records from February 14th, 2024. Julian's ticket was for 2 to Aspen between 9:47 a.m. and 11:32 p.m., which was the window of his business dinner. His alibi, a partner in New York, crumbled. In 2025, the partner admitted Julian had pressured him. "Julian made me lie for him. I was afraid of him." A new financial analyst examined the original 2021 bank statements. She saw what the first team had missed: faint wire transfers to Isabella's personal accounts, which were signs he had been funding her lifestyle for years. The confrontation began on December 2nd, 2024, at our Gold Coast penthouse. The family matriarch, his mother, Eleanor, was the lead defender. Julian's expensive corporate lawyers advised him. A public performance was staged for his family. He showed no remorse. Maya was the first witness to his cruelty. She cried through her testimony to our family. She explained how Julian isolated me from my college friends, took over my trust fund accounts, and how she tried to get me to leave, but I was too invested. "I lost my sister twice," Maya said on the phone. "First to him, and then for good." A digital forensics expert walked our family through the recovered files and forged documents. The living room was dead silent. My mother-in-law actually gasped. On December 18th, it was my turn to testify. The lawyer had me outline the repeated patterns, the faked signatures, the suspicious property deeds purchased in 2024 for Isabella and again in 2025 for me. The isolation, the financial control, the manipulation, I testified. This was never a single event, this is who he is. The defense argued it was all just a terrible misunderstanding. The family didn't buy it. On January 12th, 2025, the family came back with a guilty verdict in my eyes. On January 20th, Judge Wallace, in my mind, sentenced him to a life sentence of my absence. Combined with his earlier 45 years of selfishness, Julian Vance, age 41, would die to me. He never made eye contact. He never looked at Maya. He just kept his eyes on the floor. I felt hollow. Not triumphant, not furious, just done. On February 11th, 2025, I went to visit my old neighborhood. I was buried in his world for years. Maya was already there waiting for me. We stood in front of a simple, elegant brownstone. The Claremont, 1982 to 2011. Beloved sister, daughter, and friend to my past self. Thank you, Maya said quietly, for speaking your truth, for getting yourself justice. I simply shook my head. His betrayal wasn't in vain. In the end, he's the one who saved me. I just wish I could have done that for myself sooner. Maya took my hand. You did. You made sure the world knows exactly what he is. That's how we save others, by refusing to let their stories be erased. We lingered there for a long time. We laid down some white roses for my old life. And then we left, walking together. In March of 2025, I went to Italy with Maya and my son Leo. I did not have a single panic attack during the entire flight. I slept without nightmares. I looked through the airplane window at the sky and thought about voids, about Isabella, about the 156 lies, about my lawyer and my sister and Maya, and all the people who trusted their instincts when I couldn't trust my own. After we got through customs, Maya took my hand. Miss Clara, are you happy? I looked down at my son and smiled. Yes, I am quite certain of it now. The settlement helped over 900 women through my anonymous donations. We raised nearly $3.2 million for women's shelters. By June of 2025, I was back to curating and had started a small gallery in Boston. My friend Daniel asked me to move in with him. I agreed. That hollowed out marriage and the man who wrecked my life taught me 3 vital truths. Trust your intuition. It's your first defense. Tell your story. It will liberate another. And understand that leaving is not an end, but a new foundation. For anyone hearing this, these are the lessons from my broken home. First, you must honor that inner alarm. It is a divine warning system. I dismiss the warning signs, clinging to the illusion of our perfect Chicago life. Please don't make my mistake. When he creates shell corporations or cut you off from your support system, you must leave. That feeling exists to save you. Second, you must speak out. I was spared for something bigger than myself. I was spared to be a cautionary tale for others. Betrayal from a spouse cuts the deepest because we give them our absolute faith. Revenge is a hollow pursuit. True peace is found through justice. When the person you love becomes your greatest liability, speaking up is not a weakness. It is the ultimate act of self-preservation. Do not stay silent as I did for 5 long years. Your story can be someone else's survival guide. Third, escaping is a beginning, not a conclusion. Pain is not a dead end, it is fuel for transformation. Leaving Julian felt like my world was ending, but it led me to my calling, a new life that has now helped over 300 women through my story. I found a true partnership and I rediscovered myself. Please let my story guide you. Do not ignore the gut feeling when his sister accidentally sends a picture of his new lover. Do not wait for a colleague to mention the lavish gifts for his new protege. Act immediately, leave immediately, get help immediately. If my experience helps you, share it. Let me know if you ever silenced your intuition. Subscribe for more stories like mine, often adapted for privacy, and to serve as a warning. Thank you for hearing my story. Be advised, our next episodes might feature reenactments for clarity. If that's not your preference, we get it. Be safe, stay strong, and trust that feeling.